I haven't quite hit on like a absolute thesis for the dissertation, which is kind of unfortunate because it's done and I'm still not sure what the thesis is. But it's roughly about kind of two things. One is that I believe that in this period, women and men write the story of intermarriage differently. In a large part, when men write the story of intermarriage, they are thinking about the question of continuity, which I think is the major question about intermarriage today in kind of like sociological literature and in Jewish communal conversation. It's not about the content of the marriage itself, it's about will Judaism survive through the children. And in my mind, that is a reading of intermarriage that discounts women's experience, discounts the experience of marriage in general, but in particular, thinks about the woman's body as a reproductive tool. So because only Jewish women can produce Jewish children, you have to marry a Jewish woman. It's very much a masculine perspective about creating progeny through the Jewish woman. And I think that Jewish women writing the story of intermarriage tend to focus much more on the content of the relationship itself. There are fewer children, at least in the narratives that I've been reading, and much less discussion about children, and it's much more about how the marriage gets negotiated between a man and a woman. I don't necessarily think that the conclusions that they reach about intermarriage are different. I think on a large part, both men and women in this period writing about intermarriage generally reject the idea of intermarriage. But I think that the content of the narratives is different around gender. So that's kind of one major thesis. And the other is that, just to say that intermarriage was an extremely important, or interethnic romance, a lot of these don't actually have marriages, but interethnic romance was an extremely important topic in this period. In the symbolism of this period, people thought of it as kind of like America was the land of intermarriage in some way, whether it was like the symbolic marriage of Jews with Americanness, or whether it was actual intermarriage. And that we think about it as being such a contemporary concern, but because the numbers of intermarriage, the rates of intermarriage were so much lower in the early 20th century, but I think it loomed much larger in the sort of symbolic imaginary of Jewish Americans in that period than we realize.